A single desert crossroads has decided the fate of empires for 4,000 years. Every major power in human history has either fought for control of this region or paid someone else who did. Why does one corner of the planet, barely 5% of Earth's land, command so much blood, oil, and attention? What? The Middle East sits at the junction of 3 continents. It holds 2/3 of the world's proven oil reserves. The birthplaces of 3 major religions, and some of the busiest shipping lanes on the planet. The region stretches from Egypt's Mediterranean coast to Iran's eastern mountains, from Turkey's Anatolian plateau to the Arabian Peninsula's southern deserts. For the past century, this area has been the stage for proxy wars, revolutions, oil shocks, and refugee crises that ripple across the globe. What happens here does not stay here. It shapes gas prices in Berlin, election debates in Washington, and security policies in Beijing. The modern Middle East was born in violence and ink. After World War I, European powers drew borders across Ottoman ruins with little regard for tribal, ethnic, or religious lines. Britain and France carved up territories into new nations that had never existed before. Iraq, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon emerged as political experiments, not organic countries. Oil changed everything in the 1930s. Western companies discovered massive reserves under Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Iran. Suddenly, the region was not just strategic, it was economically vital. Control of Middle Eastern oil meant control of industrial power. The creation of Israel in 1948 introduced a fault line that has never healed. Arab-Israeli wars followed in 1967 and 1973. Redrawing maps and deepening resentments, millions of Palestinians became refugees. Their displacement became a rallying cause across the Arab world. Then came the Iranian Revolution in 1979, which transformed a U.S.-allied monarchy into an anti-Western theocracy. The balance of power shifted overnight. Iran and Saudi Arabia became rival poles, Shia versus Sunni, competing for influence from Lebanon to Yemen. Iraq invaded Iran in 1980, beginning an 8-year war that killed over 1 million people. The West armed Saddam Hussein. A decade later, the same Western powers invaded Iraq after Saddam seized Kuwait. The attacks of September 11, 2001, brought American troops back to the region in force. Afghanistan and Iraq became battlegrounds in a war on terror that would destabilize the entire area. Al-Qaeda mutated into ISIS, and chaos spread across Syria, Libya, and Yemen. The Arab Spring of 2011 promised change, but delivered mostly bloodshed. Tunisia succeeded. Egypt cycled back to military rule. Libya collapsed into warlordism. Syria descended into civil war. The dream of democratic reform drowned in sectarian violence. Let's look at what makes this region structurally unstable, backed by data. First, energy dominance. The Middle East contains approximately 836 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, roughly 60% of the global total. Natural gas reserves are similarly concentrated, especially in Qatar and Iran. Second, strategic geography. The Strait of Hormuz, just 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, channels about 21 million barrels of oil per day, roughly 21% of global petroleum consumption. The Suez Canal handles 12% of global trade. Closing either route for even a week would trigger worldwide economic shock. Third, external involvement. At least 9 major powers maintain military bases or conduct operations in the region, including the United States, Russia, Turkey, Iran, France, and Britain. Proxy conflicts in Syria, Yemen, and Libya involve more than a dozen state and non-state actors. Fourth, demographic pressure. The region's population has tripled since 1970. Youth unemployment in many countries exceeds 25%. Water scarcity is accelerating, with the Tigris and Euphrates rivers at historic lows. Fifth, arms flows. Middle Eastern governments accounted for 35% of global arms imports between 2018 and 2022. The region is the world's largest weapons market, ensuring that conflicts remain lethal and prolonged. Not everyone agrees on why instability persists. Some analysts emphasize colonial legacy, arguing that artificial borders guaranteed ethnic and sectarian. Others point to resource curse theory, where oil wealth funds authoritarian regimes and stifles diversification. A third view blames great power interference, claiming that the region would stabilize if left alone. Critics of this position note that internal conflicts predate modern Western involvement, and that regional powers like Iran, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia pursue their own imperial ambitions regardless of external actors. Some argue that religious sectarianism is the core driver, while others insist that sectarian rhetoric is just political manipulation, a tool elites use to mobilize populations and justify aggression. Both things can be true at once. Religion provides the language of conflict, but the causes are often territorial, economic, and strategic. There are also gaps in the public record. Arms deals are often classified, proxy funding is deliberately obscured, and casualty figures in active war zones remain disputed. What we see in the news is rarely the full picture. Behind every data point is a human life disrupted or destroyed. The Syrian civil war has displaced 13 million people, roughly half the country's pre-war population. Entire cities like Aleppo and Homs were reduced to rubble. Families scattered across Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, and Europe, many living in camps for over a decade. Yemen's conflict has created what the UN calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis. More than 23 million people, 3/4 of the population, need assistance. Children die from preventable diseases because hospitals lack medicine and clean water. The war rarely makes headlines, but the suffering is immense. Iraqi civilians have endured 4 decades of war, sanctions, occupation, and insurgency. An entire generation has known nothing but violence. In Gaza and the West Bank, millions live under blockade or military occupation. Their movements restricted, their futures uncertain. These are not abstractions. They're teachers, engineers, children, grandparents, people with dreams now indefinitely on hold. Think of the Middle East as a geopolitical choke point. Imagine a narrow bridge that every supply truck in your city must cross. Whoever controls that bridge controls the city's economy. The Middle East is that bridge for the global economy, except the stakes are energy, trade routes, and military positioning. Oil is not just fuel, it is leverage. When prices spike, inflation rises worldwide, governments fall, and recessions begin. This is why every major power keeps a hand in the region, why aircraft carriers patrol the Gulf, why diplomats shuttle between capitals trying to prevent the next crisis. Religious sites add another layer. Jerusalem is sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Mecca and Medina are the heart of Islam. These places carry emotional and spiritual weight that transcends politics. Any threat to them mobilizes millions. This is not irrational. It is identity, history, and faith compressed into geography. The region also sits on a civilizational crossroads. Ideas, technologies, and armies have passed through here for millennia. The Middle East was the cradle of writing, agriculture, mathematics, and astronomy. The current turmoil is a recent chapter in a very long story. Understanding that depth helps explain why conflicts feel so intractable. They are layered, generational, and tied to competing visions of history. We know this much. The Middle East combines irreplaceable resources, strategic geography, unresolved historical grievances, and intense great power competition. It has been a battleground for a century and shows no signs of stabilizing on its own. What we do not know is whether any outside intervention can help or whether it only makes things worse. We also do want to know if the energy transition away from oil will reduce tensions or simply shift them to new resources like lithium and rare earths. The question now is not if the region will remain a hotspot, but how the nature of that conflict will evolve. Scenario 1. Continued fragmentation, high confidence. Current trends suggest ongoing proxy wars, weak central governments, and humanitarian crises. Yemen, Syria, and Libya remain unstable. Iran and Saudi Arabia continue their Cold War through local allies. This is the default trajectory, unless something major changes. Scenario 2. Some analysts see signs of détente. Saudi Arabia and Iran recently restored diplomatic ties. The Abraham Accords normalized relations between Israel and several Arab states. If these trends hold, competition might become less violent, though tensions will persist. Scenario 3. A direct war between Iran and Israel, or a closure of the Strait of Hormuz, could trigger global economic crisis and draw in multiple powers. This remains possible, but not inevitable. Both sides have incentives to avoid full-scale war, but miscalculation is always a risk. Scenario 4. As the world slowly shifts away from oil, the Middle East's strategic value may decline. This could reduce foreign intervention, but it could also collapse local economies dependent on oil revenue, creating new instability. The transition will take decades, and the short-term effects are unpredictable. Outro and CTA, the Middle East, will remain a global hotspot because it sits at the intersection of resources, religion, and rivalry. Geography is not destiny, but it shapes the options available. Until the region finds internal stability, or the world finds alternatives to what it offers, the cycle will continue. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.